Hello, friends. Both old and new. Djinn St. Baptiste, actually Djinn St. Baptiste today. And I am joined here by Amy Truer Than True. We're here to talk some American Gods. Djinn St. Baptiste, actually Djinn St. Baptiste today. Episode 5. And I have an awful echo. Amy Truer Than True.
You've got your...
What's going on? Djinn St. Baptiste, actually Djinn St. Baptiste today. Episode... Echo's gone? Okay, cool. Hey, I always do something wrong. That's like what I specialize in.
That was a minor technical issue compared to normal.
We made it live. Everybody, how are you today? We were talking about having kid issues earlier. We weren't talking about children. We were actually sacrificing a goat to Thor. And it was just a mess. The knife wasn't sharp enough. It was just an absolute mess. There's blood all over my freaking house.
Half decapitated goats running around. What can you do?
You know, what do? You're just like, oh, you poor little fuckers. Like, so who do we have with us today? Lady Laura Dane, Bobby Catalano. We have Johnny B. Crazies here. Imagination Realm, Phantom D. Saint. By the way, all of you, thank you so much for your patience. It's kid issues. They're like, goats are just such a pain in the butt. Yeah. Did I miss anybody?
Forest Blurter.
Forest Blurter, and of course,
and
Ron Holler.
Oh, and Sarah Brightraw has just popped in as well.
Well, hello, Sarah. Brown Holler has the one spanner to rule them all. If you're not a Cylon, you don't get a spanner unless you're Brown Holler. She's the one.
The only human with a spanner.
So this episode, oh my gosh, some crazy shit goes on. Where do you just want to plow through the episode and then we'll go to the spoilery stuff? Which, by the way, for anybody who's new here, we try to save any book spoilers for the second half of the show. We will make an announcement, like when we get to that point, like, hey, watch out if you don't want to be spoiled. Maybe click away. But yeah. So there's this thing that happens this episode. What are your thoughts there?
Which thing? There's so many things.
Oh, I meant like this big... yeah, there are so many things in this episode. But I mean, like, the elephant in the freaking room. What you've been saying you want to happen for the past 5 weeks.
Sweeney and Laura, I called it. That scene that we caught in the... when they travelled through the Horde, we actually saw the actual thing. So that was some sort of future vision, perhaps, that popped up when they had their little travel. I knew they were going to get together. Well, maybe temporarily anyway. I'm really interested to see where this goes now.
Yeah, maybe we should talk about that a bit more in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, once in a while you hook up with that person you've always wanted to hook up with, and then you're so dissatisfied.
I don't think it was... I think they were freaked out by it rather than dissatisfied. But yeah, we'll come to that bit. But we did see the actress that plays Laura in the first scene. It appeared to be Essie McGowan in that first scene.
Terribly. Well, I think it's her over and over and over again, because Essie McGowan would have been, because that was supposed to be like 1912.
Unless he was long before that, wasn't it?
Right. She was in the 18th century.
So, yeah, it made me think maybe there's some sort of weird reincarnation thing going on. Or they just really like using this actress. Yeah, we got a dead body in the straw. Sort of, it looked like hunting dogs coming across it. There's sort of a crowd shouting a sheriff, and then we get someone being lynched. His rope snaps, which is was like a sort of throwback to when Shadow gets lynched in season 1.
Yes.
His rope snapped, exactly the same. But someone shoots him, and the crowd are all kicking him. He's tied onto a car and sort of dragged off with 2 women quite happily sitting either side, which was a pretty brutal opener if I've ever seen one. Certainly no, not a gentle opening to an episode.
No, I mean, it's an extremely disturbing scene. But I think it works well. I think you need those disturbing moments in books and telly and cinema to really make you think about things.
Yeah, it's not sugar coated. It's very
No,
graphic.
no, not remotely. If anybody can think of the antonym for sugar coated, please throw it out there, and I will hashtag the fuck out of it, because that's the beginning of this episode. Like, it's disturbing. It's we live in a time and in parts of our own respective countries where you don't see things like that. But you think about it, this is 100 years ago. That's it.
Which isn't really that long.
Yeah.
And you have the theme sort of running through this episode that persecution happened then and it's still happening now, albeit slightly differently, but it's kind of hammering the message home that, okay, 100 years have gone by, but are they really being treated any better now than they were then?
Yeah, I can see how the message can come across as a little too heavy-handed. Not that it's a message I disagree with, but I think it might be a little heavy. Not necessarily, I think, but I can see how someone would think that the message is a little heavy-handed, especially someone who's just read the book, which we'll talk about in a bit. Because the book doesn't really go into this at all.
No, and it was kind of, it's been kind of building up to that last episode as well. It was kind of an overarching theme. It's interesting that they're exploring it that way and coming at it from that angle, because it works. It does. Especially when you've got sort of the collection of gods that are almost maybe breaking away slightly from the war that's going on, like kind of maybe coming up with their own little faction, maybe, because that's more important to them than old gods versus new gods. Yeah, oh god, the next scene where it jumps straight into Shadow. So it kind of seemed like Shadow was dreaming that, rather than it just being a general flashback. It seemed like that was very much going on in his head. And then his eyes turn like orange and fiery, very reminiscent of how Wednesday's eyes went in the scene when Betty was reincarnated and you saw the flames in his eyes. And then we get this flash. I had to go back and sort of just keep pausing and replaying it to get the full thing, but it flashed as him in old-fashioned dress, and then with a zombie face was the only way I can describe it. It scared the absolute shit out of me. It made me jump so much. It wasn't like the face that was scary. It was just because there was a really loud noise at the same time, and I was just like, fucking hell. But I did manage to catch. It's another one of these things, like with the horde scene. It's like blink and you'll miss it. And because I'm technically inept, I can't share it actually on the screen. So we've got Shadow's fiery eyes. I'm trying to make sure there's no glare. And then you actually do see him in this old-fashioned sort of outfit. And then this delightful face. And it was literally over the space of 1 second. But yeah, that absolutely frightened the life out of me. I did not expect it.
I always miss it in the credits, but if anyone knows who the tailor for American Gods is, please give me their phone number, because the costuming in this is brilliant.
Yeah.
Especially like just when Shadow's working in the funeral home.
Yes.
I love classic style, like 1920s, 1930s style men's formal wear.
It's quite. It was almost similar actually to what the guy that appears behind him was wearing. If you notice, because he was wearing when he first comes downstairs, Shadow's wearing braces as well. And that's what I've totally forgotten his name now.
You explain braces to the Americans who are hanging out with us today. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, the ghost guy. I've just completely forgotten his name.
Like bracers. It's a term that Americans don't use.
Oh, okay. What would you call them?
Suspenders.
Okay, suspenders are something entirely different to me. Suspenders are what hold your stockings up. I would not call those suspenders, but yeah, we would call them braces. But yeah, it's what I keep saying the ghost guy. What was the ghost guy called? I just want to.
No, I couldn't find my notes today.
Will James, that was his name.
Yeah, Will James. Thank you.
So, yes, Will James was also wearing sort of a white shirt with a pattern on. Wasn't the same pattern on the shirt. I think one had like some sort of spotty design and one was stripy, but he had braces and the shirt on as well. So it was quite interesting that Shadow is then wearing a similar outfit. But what he made him do, like he'd got the razor and holding it up to his throat, and it seems of the actual physical Shadow and not the reflection. It was trying to resist and really struggling, and then the Shadow in the mirror suddenly had the bullet holes in his chest. It appeared to be in the same place. that Will James in the dream slash flashback, where he'd been shot and then his head was on fire. And he stops at the last minute, and then Will James appears behind him and whispers "Memento Mori." Again, that was another bit that made me jump, but not quite as much as Zombie Shadow. It was quite a sort of a surprising opening. It was like very, very quick, and sort of suddenly like a lot seems to have happened in a very short space of time.
Well, Memento Mori, you know,
it's I think it's technically it's the literal translation is remember death.
Yeah, remember the dead.
Or remember the dead, yeah.
And that is what this episode's about.
Yeah. There's lots of deaths. I mean, well, it's called Ways of the Dead, so there's lots of. It's like an overarching theme. Mr. Wednesday in the other room with that plant cutting.
Yeah. Oh, you know, he's such a brilliant actor because he underscores things without being like what's it's very hard to, it's like stage magic, which is perfect for this character, which we'll get into in a little while, but it's like stage magic. It is so much harder to take a coin because I've done stage magic like since I was a little kid. It is so much harder to take a coin out of my hand and make it look like I kept the coin in my hand than it is to just keep the coin in my hand. You have to do the whole show behind it, and the way Wednesday does everything, it's like watching a stage magician.
Yeah, there's a certain
you see the trick.
Yeah. But I think it was you and Ron Hull thought it might have been mistletoe, the cutting, but he actually did say Idrisil.
Well, no, but that wasn't the plant.
Was it not the same one?
No,
when he unfolded it, it looked like the same thing that Iktomi had.
I you might be right, but I'm pretty sure that the Djinn and Salim have both the plant that Iktomi folded into an apple.
Of course, because that scene when he gets the spear is after.
So Odin plants this, and then he pisses it, and that's a hilarious scene. Shadow walks in. It's like
that was very funny.
You know that
pissing on the
plant. Yep, they do.
The world's tree? How dare you? Like, how could you insinuate I'd do something like that? It's like, I've just watched you do it. It's ever so funny the way he pretends things like certain times. Like when somebody says something bad about him, sometimes he's like, what? And pretends he hasn't heard, or he seems.
Right.
I don't know if he's pretending he hasn't heard or he genuinely hasn't heard it. Like there was that moment in the last episode where Mama G was telling Shadow that that Wednesday would be the death of him, and he kind of leans over like, huh, what? And it's like, is he pretending that he didn't hear what she said, or did he really not hear her?
Yeah.
And it's like this sort of playing dumb thing that he does.
That's one that still sits with me. Was he playing dumb in that scene, or is it just like Mama G's like? I mean, we're talking about freaking Kali, like we're talking about a deity that's still pretty well represented and worshipped in this day and age.
Yeah.
So maybe she's a little more powerful than Papa Odin.
She could well be.
Like maybe she can lean over and whisper to Shadow, like, and he's what?
Yeah, maybe he genuinely didn't hear her. But I think sometimes you can see he's just he's playing dumb. Like just the fact that he's like, you know, how could you insinuate such a thing? Like with the fact that I've just stood and watched you do it, kind of gives it away a little bit. And he tells Shadow he's kind of off on a little adventure without him. And he's to stay with Mr. Ibis and learn about the ways of the dead. And he mentions they want humans to be on bended knee offering up their firstborn and 2 more kids to be named later. His lines are just crazy.
The script writing is brilliant there. The script writing is brilliant there. I think the best script writing in this episode is the scenes between Ibis, Anansi, and Odin.
Oh yeah, their last scene at the end was quite funny as well. Kind of drunk and singing. And so then Ibis is he asks Shadow if he's comfortable sleeping under the same roof as the dead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, in the show they even use Ibis, so I should try and pronounce it that way. Ibis is stuck in my head.
I'd naturally say Ibis anyway. I think. I assume like because it's Egyptian, like the goddess is Isis, and so it's only 1 letter difference. So I'd assume that the I at the beginning is pronounced the same way. Random feather floating through the air. Then
I wish a lot of Atlantis documentaries and stuff like that. They always say Ibis.
Fair enough.
So maybe that's where I get it from.
It could be. It's probably one of those things that it's just like a regional thing or something. Well, yeah. So Shadow's happy sleeping under the same roof as the dead, as long as they stay that way. I think he's quite comfortable with it as long as they're not up and walking and talking and following him round, calling him puppy. The next scene with Sweeney, it took me a second watch before I realised that the statue wasn't Jesus, because that's what I thought at first until I actually watched it more carefully. Really, it's St. Jude, who's the patron saint of desperate cases and lost causes, and one of the 12 disciples. Is that right?
No, St. Jude was not one of the 12 disciples, but he is the patron saint of the lost. He's the patron saint of the homeless. He's the patron saint of the starving and suffering. And
so I'm just going off Wikipedia.
and I thought that I thought it was Jesus.
No, he calls it Jude. And it totally makes sense then, as if it's like lost causes. It kind of quite fitting with how Sweeney is in that scene. Like,
no, because I think it being Jesus would be far more fitting. He's like, you motherfucker, like.
He calls it Judy.
Well, Judy would, if you break it down phonetically, would mean Jude would mean the same thing as Jesus. I mean, it would be the same. It would be a child of Yahweh. So I don't think it's St. Jude, because they don't celebrate Jude in New Orleans.
No, I did. Well, that's why I thought it was Jesus at first, especially because it looked like it might be Mardi Gras, because Sweeney's wearing beads and when he falls down, there's like flowers and stuff. And
Well, if you go to the fucking French Quarter, it's always fucking Mardi Gras. It's
fair enough. I've never been there, so I wouldn't know.
like I told my son, I was like, okay, go to New Orleans. Because he was like, oh, I'm thinking of going to New Orleans. I'm like, okay, cool. Go there now and do all that crazy, stupid shit when you're in your 20s. And then, like, go back at my age and appreciate the city for how cool it is.
From an Anne Rice kind of perspective, instead. Oh, and he's not in a good place though at this point. Sweeney's obviously down on his luck, quite literally, absolutely shit-faced on rum.
Further that coin gets from me.
Yeah.
Which I did point out, I think, like 3 episodes ago. Like,
yeah.
The further that coin gets from him, the worse things get.
They do. His luck sort of it seems to be depending on his like how close he is. And yeah, he falls down on what looks like on a shrine, but he does actually say, he looks up and says Jude, like he's really confused, like he thinks the statue's moved. And then when he realizes it's Laura, he says, oh fuck, it's you. Tells her that she looks less decomposed. Just a bit of a backhanded compliment.
And I just love it. It's like, it really is a reflection of New Orleans, because you can walk around with a bottle of rum and fall
down drunk on the floor. They drinking in pub, like drinking walking down the street is an offence here. You can get fined for it.
Right.
In most places.
It's legal there. It's just like insane. It's insanity. It's oh, I mean, I could totally go into the like PowerPoints, Nexus nodes things. Like, there's a certain Nexus in New Orleans. I'm not going to subject anybody to that, but like you can walk down the street just drinking, and if you happen to be drinking good Jamaican rum, by the way, I noticed the bottle that he was drinking from.
I didn't, but I'm not really much of a rum fan, so.
Nor am I, but it's.
I like the taste, but not the effect. It's one of those things that makes me feel a bit queasy. So
I don't like either, but it's like what I make a living doing is.
Yeah, I drink it in a cocktail at push, but.
And so he's just like walking down the street, drinking all like rum straight out of the bottle. Like, it's bizarre. It's totally legal there.
Mm. And he's wearing a little lanyard with like a sightseeing card thing on, like he's been on some sort of sightseeing tour. So it was funny. It's like, God, what the hell's he been up to? And he tells Laura the further he gets from the coin in her rotten innards, the more rotten his luck becomes. That was a nice line. And then they arrive at the Coq Noir, which is Black Rooster. And that the Black Rooster is one of the actual symbols of Brigitte. Again, I'm going by Google on this.
It's also in voodoo, a black rooster you sacrifice to.
Yeah, it's the thing used in sort of voodoo rituals as well. He brings a coin out of the hoard to pay the guy that's drumming outside, and apparently buys his shirt as well, which was a bit strange. So they come into Brigitte telling Sandy she's going to cut his dick off with a tomato knife. because he's flirting with someone. I thought that was pretty some rather violent banter, I think. But from how you see them with each other later on, it seems very much that that's just kind of what their relationship's like.
Oh, their banner is brilliant. I think some of the best dialogue thus far this season, honestly. The only better dialogue might be like Laura and Sweeney.
There's a pretty cracking line from Wednesday in a little while as well that I thought was really funny. But
yeah, but Wednesday it's always monologues. He's kind of like
Phantom Djinn St of all knives. Yeah, I didn't even know that a tomato knife was a thing. Like, when it comes to kitchen knives, I have a vegetable knife, not a specific tomato knife. So,
well, I think most people call it a paring knife.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I knew what she was talking about, like paring knife. It's
yeah,
very
that makes
and ridiculously sharp.
Yeah, small and sharp. Sandy greets Sweeney in French as his crazy brother, which I thought was quite sweet. And so he's like happy to see him, and Brigitte straight away saying like, "We're not going to join in this war." Kind of straight away like, "No, we know what you're here for. Not going to happen." And she refers to themselves as the Gedi Loa, which are like a group of Haitian voodoo sort of practitioners. I want to say they're not really gods as such.
The Getty Loa, the whole concept is it's almost like a demigod.
Yeah,
but they're very Haitian voodoo is such a nuanced religion because it's aspects of traditional African culture and traditional Native American cultures and Christianity, like and like pulls them all together and does their thing.
it's very complex. And again, I'm kind of going off 5 minutes of reading a couple of things through Google to kind of go, oh, what does this mean? But if anybody sort of has further insight, do feel free to chime in. Love Imagination Realm says, I'm loving the tomato pronunciation. I'm guessing that's because there is from your side of the pond as well, because I've just realised nobody else in the chat probably says tomato. You all say tomato. There's a whole song about that. Brigitte knows straight away that Laura's dead.
Yeah. Take a
Straight away, she's looking good for being dead. Which again, a bit of a backhanded compliment. Poor Laura.
Grosses me out so much. Like that scene is perfect, but it grosses me out so much.
Oh, the way they're sort of oh, hang on, that might have been later on where she sort of blows smoke all over her.
Where she does the has the drink. Here, drink this.
Yeah, that's oh, that was later on.
Okay.
Yeah, that's like I was just thinking, is that? Yeah, but the thing with the maggots, yeah, that's later on. And yeah, Sweeney's kind of like, we're not here on behalf of Odin. We're here for her. And they say that she can join the chef's table after hours, and then say welcome home to Sweeney. So it gives the impression that there's quite a long-standing relationship between them. And
does everybody in the chat know what a chef's table is? We'll assume yes.
I'm just having a look. sing the song. I'm not going to sing. It'll start raining. Ron Hallis says about the Gadilloa. They are deities, but not gods. Maman Brigitte is the only white lower because she's derived from Saint Bridget, who is derived from the goddess Bridget. Yeah, and that could be why Sweeney knows them quite well. If she's perhaps the same as the Irish goddess Bridget, or are they different incarnations of the same thing? But that could be why there's a bit of the history with her and Sweeney as well. And she's a well, not a goddess as such, but deity of death and fertility, which is a bit of an odd combination.
Not really. Actually, if you look at most religions, there is a specifically goddess, not God, goddess of death and fertility.
Yeah,
quite often they're the same. They're the same deity, and it's usually female.
Yeah, it's kind of like giving with one hand and taking away with the other, almost. So we move from this sort of reunion to the Djinn and Celine waiting for Wednesday, and the Djinn is questioning Salim about his faith, because he's thanking Allah because he's eaten, and he says, you know, I thank him for every meal. Like, why don't you? And he says that he was born long before. Says the prophet's revelations. I assume he's referring to Muhammad. And he and all the Jinn were given a choice to convert to Islam or live as heretic demons, and he chose to be a heretic demon. And he asks him, after all you've seen, you still believe your God is the one true God? And Salim says, yeah. So although he does believe in all these other gods, like he gets that they exist, he still thinks that his God is above them, maybe.
Well, if you look back at the Bible, if you read Genesis, there's plural nouns are used so much in Genesis. We and us, and they're used so much. I mean, that's where, as someone who gets into like biblical scholarship, and you can definitely see how a lot of what's written there came from polytheistic religions, but Yahweh is always like, you know, the big bad, or the big good.
Yeah, I suppose it depends which side you look at it.
John Holler, yes, the chef's table is actually in the kitchen. That's with a reference. The chef's table is actually in the kitchen, right in front of where the food is being created. So when you're sitting at the chef's table in a restaurant that offers one, you're literally sitting in the kitchen and watching the food you're about to eat, and everybody else is about to eat. Like, be prepared. That was the reference that's there.
So yeah, the same kind of counters with the first pillar of Islam, is that there is no God but God. I'm not sure if that's like a translation of what they actually are in Arabic, because like there's 5, but I don't know what the actual, like, the literal translations are. So they're declaration of faith, obligatory prayer, compulsory giving, fasting during Ramadan, and pilgrimage to Mecca. And I think it's the declaration of faith part. It's probably like a literal translation, but that's what it actually means, that they have to have the faith that there are no other gods. It's just that one, and that's it. And the Djinn counts. Thomas Jefferson said all men are created equal, but he still owned slaves.
No,
Which,
I love that. I loved that line.
it's a damn good point, and it kind of links into a lot of the themes of people of colour being persecuted in America and how they've been treated, and the bits that we see happening in Cairo and
Yep.
what happened there historically. It's very much kind of a nod towards that as well. Wednesday's line when he pulls up in the car, "I'm here to pick up two gentlemen from the city of Sodom." Absolutely pissing myself at that one. And yeah, there's obviously a bit of a double meaning with that. And he says, "Oh, that reminds me, you must have been there. How was the party?" It was pretty funny. I think it pisses the Djinn off, but Salim again seems a little bit oblivious to what's going on.
It's hilarious how Wednesday's trying to sell himself to Celine,
Oh God, yeah.
and Celine's like, no, you're like sketchy AF, dude.
Yeah. Thanks, but no thanks. And the Djinn sort of swears in Arabic and says, "Well, you're late." And something that he says, "I'll keep your audience waiting. It's something I learned from my burlesque days," which I think we're going to see a bit of in the next episode from the trailer.
Yes.
Looks like he was sort of involved in some sort of cabaret type thing. So yeah, we might see some of that. And he tells them that the king of the dwarves awaits. Selim's concerned about the motorbike, and he says, she will be just fine. We find out why it's going to be fine later on. And Selim says to the Djinn, so it's him that you worship then, like Wednesday, and the Djinn's pissed by that. He says that he was in an amulet around Odin's neck, but he let him out. But he's still.
Multiple characters point out that they don't want to help Odin, but they're
they all owe him in some way, don't they? He's seems like a lot of people owe him favors.
Right.
I'm very intrigued to know why Sweeney owes him. I hope we find that out soon. He says, "Yeah, I'm beholden to him, but he's not my fucking god." But I thought it was quite amusing that he was in an amulet around Odin's neck, because obviously Djinn is kind of where we get a genie from. So it's just like a genie trapped inside an object.
Right.
It's just like, did he have to rub the necklace to make him come out? But if he did, I imagine, I expect some sort of quip about that at some point from Wednesday.
If not, I would be very disappointed.
Yeah, it's they're missing a trick there if they don't make some sort of pun or something about it.
Off-color joke.
Sorry?
If they don't make some sort of off-color joke.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what, like, Odin can get away with it, because you're like, oh, it's just this old dude. He can get away with saying these things that, like, someone my age or your age, like, couldn't say publicly, but like an older person does, and you're like, oh, it's just grandpa, like, being offensive.
Yeah, kind of gets away with it. And he makes them sit up front with him because he doesn't want them canoodling in Betty's back seat in case they get pulled over.
I look like a chauffeur.
It was
Yeah, that was brilliant.
like later on when you see them all sat in the front, they just look so uncomfortable. But yeah, he's just like, can't have you two canoodling in the back seat. He is mocking their relationship, but I don't think at any point they have actually said that they're well, they're not really a couple as such, but there doesn't seem to have been any point when they've mentioned that to anybody else. So it's like, how do they all know? Because later on when they're in the car, Wednesday's kind of making reference to it. And then we get to, this week's Somewhere in America, in case anybody's interested in finding all those little Easter eggs. That's in this scene. The next one, where you've got Nancy and the guy in the hoodie kind of walking towards the same corner. It's written, well, it's got somewhere in, and then the flag sort of written around the building.
Yeah.
The way Nancy is kind of like he's waiting for him, like he stops and he actually starts following him. But then we don't see him sort of with the guy again. It's just like, what was he up to? Because later on, he's implying that Mr. Ibis might have something to do with the number of people that are passing through the funeral home. But it seemed like he was up to something at that point. And then we see him go into a drug house and straight away being caught by the police, which was very bad luck, really. And I thought it was cocaine he was buying at first, but it's not. It's heroin. Because you see him swallow the bag and run off. And then he encounters Will James with the burning head on a post, kind of watching him, and that distracts him. And then the police catch him. But then we see him in the funeral home because he died of an opiate overdose, because obviously that bag probably had a hole in. And it turns out he's the grandson of Lila Goodchild, who we met Ruby Goodchild last episode, and she said like that she was there for her grandma's funeral. And he's got the same wounds that we see that Shadow had earlier on, and the ones that were on Will James. So he's been shot and his face is burnt. Shadow kind of queries it and mentions the experience that he'd had. And Mr. Arbus tells him about Froggy James, he refers to him as. I believe if you look that up, it's actually based on a true story as well, like an actual thing that happened. And he's sort of mentioning that he says he brought a simmering dynamic to a catastrophic boil. It's quite a poetic way of putting it. And then we kind of have some little flashbacks to it. He says he was seen crossing paths with a white woman in broad daylight. I don't know if that in itself was supposed to have been a crime, or it's just the fact that because they saw him, or some people supposedly saw him in this situation, and that was the woman that was found dead. They put two and two together and got 5, or 105 in this case, I'd say.
She looks a wee bit familiar too.
She does. She looks like Essie from season 1, but the timing wouldn't match, or the location as well, I think.
No, but you have an Essie, and then you have this woman here in Cairo.
Mm-hmm.
And you have Flora. I think there's a meaning behind this recurring motif. At least I would bloody well hope so.
Yeah, and it's kind of starting to look that maybe she's being reincarnated, and possibly so is Shadow. Like we see him in that flashback in old-fashioned, in like sort of the clothing of the time. It could be that he's some sort of reincarnation as well. Ibis says that the sheriff did actually try and protect him, but the mob got to him. And for some reason, this is one thing that just didn't make any sense. Mr. Ibis says he was lynched, shot, beheaded, dragged behind the cart, and burnt. Now, when we see him being dragged, he's still got his head.
Well, maybe it wasn't in that order.
Yeah, it's sort of like, what? That didn't make any sense.
Maybe the beheading was like the coup de grace.
I assume because there's the thing, because we see the head on a post, you know, but obviously the beheading happened at some point, but this must have been later on. And
Mr. Ibis is a bit dramatic.
he is. Cairo's dignity reduced to a pool of blood. That's how he puts it. And then Shadow asks why he was in the mirror looking at him. And the picture that, I mean, why would Mr. Ibis even have this picture? Actually has a photograph of the like bird's eye view of him being lynched, but he looks up and speaks and says, "Memento mori, remember that you have to die," which is a big book hint. So we'll save that one for later. We'll go back.
Waller actually points out plenty of black men got lynched because of spurious reasons.
Yeah,
Which is very true.
Or they were just assumed to be guilty without any sort of trial or evidence, or yeah.
But one's very birth.
Yeah, it's something that Anansi mentioned in the previous episode. He said like people automatically assume that, you know, we've done something wrong or we're going to. It's only a matter of time. We're straight away assumed to be bad people. And we switch then back to the bar. There's a few sort of shorter scenes over the next couple. So we see Sweeney flirting with a woman in the bar, and Laura does not look happy at this point. She actually looks a bit pissed off. And the way he looks at her, it's like he's checking to see if she's watching and maybe kind of doing it to rub it in her face a little bit. I don't know if he's aware that he's doing that. But yeah, she kind of like she's sat there twiddling her thumbs, waiting, and he's enjoying himself on another bottle of rum. Then we go to Wednesday, the Djinn and Salim all squashed in the front of the car, which is where Wednesday is kind of trying to persuade Salim to worship him as well. And he says Wednesday's the name, good time's the game. And he's kind of trying to imply like, oh, well, you know, I don't care who you're sleeping with, you know, it's all good and love is love, and, you know, I don't mind.
He calls him out. He calls him a god of death.
Mm-hmm. And he is.
Yeah, like Salim calls him. Salim's a lot smarter than he's given credit for.
He is, yeah. And it kind of shows how much faith he has. You know, he's not going to just change it on a whim, despite everything that he's seen. Then we go back to the funeral home, but in the church, and the Reverend and Ruby are there, obviously getting ready for the funeral. Chris is telling Ruby that she shouldn't leave with her. he kind of got the impression at the end of the last episode that there was something going on between them. I don't know if it's just that Bilquis is trying to seduce her, or they've just got some sort of connection. But it seems that obviously Ruby was planning to leave with Bilquis. So excuse me. And she's saying that Caro's not home to her anymore. It's hell. She's worried about the consequences of her brother and her grandma being dead. The Reverend starts talking about the freedom movement and that people used to come to funerals to organise themselves and fight back, and it wasn't about grieving, and how much it's been changed.
And she calls him out. I mean, he has his own crisis of faith in this episode.
He does. And Bilquis tells him that she's sustained by the tranquility of love. And when she says that, she actually looks at Ruby. I wonder if there is some sort of seduction thing going on. And hang on a minute, just checking the chat. Just checking I haven't like missed those. Still kind of lost what the conversation on the chat.
Imagination has a damn good point right here. Her God isn't doing anything for her. So like Wednesday, she's marketing herself. Yeah, absolutely agreed. I think that's exactly what Bilquis is doing. She's marketing herself.
It could be because she doesn't want to carry on doing things how she was when she sided with the New Gods, and they'd essentially kind of introduced her to Tinder or something, and she was just using that to have all these sort of hookups and one night stands, and that's how she was sort of sustaining herself. But now she's saying she's sustained by love, and perhaps she's starting to make a bit of a differentiation between love and sex, and she's going to be able to survive on the sort of on the emotion rather than the physical side.
Well, in World put it out best in I think it was 2 episodes ago. You know, if you're not with anybody, then nobody's like I don't think anybody trusts Bilquis anymore.
No, but I don't think she trusts anyone either.
But she's like a cat's toy.
Yeah, I can still see there maybe being some sort of third. I don't want to say faction because that doesn't sound right, but like a third group with their own kind of goals with the African gods, because the connection that they all had when they were discussing things in the previous episode very much seemed like they would maybe go down a path of branching out on their own and being like, you know, with this new gods versus old gods thing isn't important to us, that, you know, this is what's important, and going off and doing their own thing. Maybe it could happen. We move on to the dwarf, Alvis, son of Vindalf, and Wednesday is trying to explain to Celine, like, you could compliment him or you can goad him. It can be tricky. And Celine's like, well, which one? But he does very well because he says, you're very tall for a dwarf, which is kind of complimenting him and goading him in the same sentence. So, you know, he's saying like he's more intelligent than he lets on. You definitely see that. And he also mistakes Celine for a god and names the same two that Wednesday did.
Who are you?
Yeah. Manat or Hubal, that's who he asks if he is. And those are the exact same two that Wednesday asked at the house on the hill when they first when he first meets Celine. That's who he mistakes him for. So I'm wondering if there might be a bit more to that, because the fact that they've done it twice now kind of makes me think, but I don't know anything about those deities, so I need to kind of look them up unless anyone in the chat wants to be helpful and actually knows. And after Salim sort of drops this, "You're very tall for a dwarf," Wednesday adds that was it Wednesday that says it? So he's the tallest dwarf in America, and it's the stature that makes him king.
No, actually, Alvis says that himself.
Was it him saying it? I couldn't remember. But yeah, he's not happy that they're there. Before that anybody else has even spoken, he's the first thing he does. He's like, no, not happening. I'm not interested. I don't want to be involved in this. But when he actually sees the spear, you can see how much he kind of just wants to do something with it. Almost, he mentions that he's a builder, not a warrior. And he's saying like, "Your war is none of my affair," but Wednesday kind of starts complimenting him and kind of flattering him to kind of get him on side. He was saying, "Oh, we were passing through, so we thought you'd like to see this. One of the greatest craftsmen of the Asgardian era. Only Ivaldi's kin would be worthy of restoring."
He's like, "I'm not one of the best. I am the best."
Yeah. He's talking about he bested Sindri. Talks about forging Milnir a ring called Dropnir. I've never heard of that one, but I have a vague recollection of the story behind it was something to do with Loki trying to play two families of dwarves up against each other.
That's why his lips eventually got sunshine.
Yeah, because if I remember rightly, he had cut. Whose hair had he cut? Thor's wife's hair. He'd cut her hair, and he wanted the dwarves to make her new hair. And he kind of tricked them into it being some sort of crafting contest, and they had to make a few things, and this is how some other things came into being. And then he got his lips sewn shut for fooling them all, because I think it was that he'd said that if they couldn't do it, then they could behead him. But he said like, "Oh, you can behead me, but you've got to do it without damaging my neck," or something.
Right.
Yes, and that was why he had his mouth sewn shut. So I thought that was a nice little Easter egg, maybe, as such, that it's kind of a reference to one of Loki's stories.
Oh yeah, what's Loki doing right now? I mean, you gotta wonder, because you have Votan, Odin, Mr. Wednesday, doing his thing, and you have a possible child of his, maybe. And you wonder what Loki's doing during this entire thing.
You do. Some of us do. Some of us don't. Let's not spoil anything just yet.
What might Loki be doing right now?
And so he says, obviously I've done all this. If you needed forging it, then yes, it would be me, but it's the runes that need attention. Because
from Holler. I'm sorry, Amy, I didn't mean to cut you.
Let's carry on.
Drupne is the ring. Like, if you get into Wagner's music, like it's Odin's ring, and it's actually like, if you get into Tolkien, what conceptually the One Ring is based on. It's this object of power that can influence everything. It has the power of the user. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Bear Island Josh has just said in the chat it's in the book what Loki is doing. Yeah, we know it's in the book, but we don't want to spoil it until after we've gone through all the scenes in the show, and then we'll kind of go a bit.
Bear Island Josh, hang out for a little bit longer, and then we'll totally get spoilery. Like just a wee bit low, 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then
let's try and kind of because there's quite a lot still. So it tells him he needs to. It's Dvalin who does rune carving, and that's who he needs. So I'm not sure if we're actually going to see Alvis again, because he's kind of like, well, yeah, I'm not going to help you. I can't actually do anything to fix your spear either, so you need to go and see this guy. When they go outside, how did the motorbike get here? Turns out it's, oh god, I'm going to butcher this. Hildisvini? Something like that. Yeah, Freya's battle boar and sometime lover.
It's okay. So like we've talked about this about Japanese, like German pronunciations, I can do great too. I have no idea what the fuck is coming out of my mouth.
Yeah,
like I can pronounce Japanese really well. No idea what I'm saying. German, same thing. I can pronounce it quite well. I have no idea what I'm saying.
Yeah, my Nordic is not that great. And he's kind of like, well, see, look what magic I've done. Do I have your faith? He's still trying to push that with Salim, like, you know, look what I can do. Obviously, I'm this awesome god. And then we go back to New Orleans. This was the scene you were talking about earlier, where Laura has the drink. Brigitte tells her she smells a little rank. It's like, nice. So she has the drink and then baths up a load of maggots, which was nice. The last time we saw her puking it up, it wasn't quite that graphic. It was from a distance. But yeah, she's just vommed up a load of maggots, which might explain the flies. They're actually coming from her, not following her.
It's like, oh, I feel better. And then she's like, oh, I feel better.
Yeah. She's like, oh, that's what the problem was. And Sandy's saying how they miss the taste and touch the most. Brigitte then blows smoke across her and it kind of goes into this slow motion thing, and it does something to Laura because then you see she suddenly gets goosebumps and all the hairs raise on her skin, and suddenly she can taste again and she can feel again. Sweeney's not happy though, tells them to knock it off. Like he kind of has an idea of what they're up to at that point. I think that there's sort of some element of them maybe trying to seduce her a bit. Brigitte's very perceptive, and I think perhaps this is because of her links with death that she seems to have kind of some link with Laura, because it's like she seems to suddenly know a lot about her. She says she's a cheater. A cheater like you, she said actually to Sweeney. Death is her true love, but she betrays him also, chasing after what she can't have. And we know she's been following Shadow basically. And
it keeps getting in her home that Shadow's not, that she doesn't love Shadow.
No. And he doesn't really seem to love her anymore either. I think he's kind of just like, yeah, you're kind of dead and I know what you did and how you died. I don't think he wants, like he mentions to Ibis earlier on, if he doesn't mind the dead as long as they stay dead. He kind of gives the impression that perhaps he would be happier if she had stayed dead. Then there's something I picked up on in this. We've got Sweeney saying, this favours to me, it's not to Laura. He says, do we have a compact? Sandy says that he trades in truth. And he says, you give me truth, I'll give you what you want. And he says to Laura, do we have a compact? And she nods. So he's basically just tricked her into making a deal with him as well.
Yeah.
And it's not brought up again, but it's just one of those really subtle things that, like, you've just made a deal with him yourself without realising. Now she owes him a favour as well.
Hey, you spit in your hands.
Yeah. So Brigitte leads Sweeney off and leaves them to it. We'll go back to Shadow. He's still looking at this photo of Will James and sort of confused about how people could have done this. He says, what's missing from someone's soul that they can do that to another? But then saying, why would he curse his own people? So he's kind of on one hand saying, well, what was done to him was awful and I can't imagine how somebody could do this. But then why is he seemingly out for vengeance against his own people and not the people that persecuted him? It does say that when he looked out on the sea of people, he only saw those who looked like him. And I think it's more to do with the fact that they didn't do anything is what his kind of issue is with that at that point. This is kind of, he looked at and saw all these people and he expected this from the white people, but that none of the other people of colour there spoke up.
It's almost like a running motif in this season. Is what we were just talking about, like that there's people who should be helping other people out because they're similar and not helping them out. I don't know how to. I probably shouldn't have even spoken because I don't know how to put it into words. But it seems like a running motif in the season.
It does, yeah. And we get Mr. Nancy comes back. And he's not just winding Shadow up straight again. One thing he says, praise Jesus and 4 more white zombies. I don't know who else he's referring to. I get the whole referring to Jesus as a zombie thing, but I don't get who else he was referring to in that scene. I'm
gonna have to dissect that now.
Yeah. And he's kind of goading Shadow, saying you're asking the wrong questions.
Well,
Shadow.
No, he says, praise Jesus.
And 4 more white zombies.
Does he say 4 more? Because you watch it with subtitles.
I do, yeah. Yeah, it says 4 more white zombies.
White zombie, I think that would be a reference to the film.
Oh, okay. I was just assuming it to be a joke regarding zombie Jesus, in that he comes back from the dead. Like he's kind of taking the piss.
White zombie would be a reference to the film, because I remember when I watched this the first time taking it that way.
Could be. Yeah, it talks about better to be pissed off than pissed on.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna break this shit down.
We've got to get to the end first. He shouts, fucking pussy. Speaking of which, I've seen your cat. He does appear to be trying to have some fun with the cat later on. He's not very happy that she walks off. Shadow is really pissed off and goes off for a drive in the hearse. and we're getting sort of the conversation between him and Ibis, and then seeing what Shadow's doing at the same time. Nancy asks him, "Where's the dog?" referring to Mr. Jackal, or Jackwell, they call him in the show. And he says, "Oh, he's having some time off." You know, the actor that plays him isn't supposed to be coming back at all for this season because he's got other commitments. But we see an actual dog then appear in front of the car, and which makes Shadow stop the car. So it's kind of like, there he is. He might be taking some time off, but he's still in the background getting involved. And there's a bit of a contention then between Ibis and Nancy, because he's trying to imply they are deliberately sort of I don't know about instigating deaths, but there's perhaps a reason why so many people are dying around there, and that they do have a very steady supply of fresh bodies. And he gets really pissed. He says to him, "If you're taking brown bodies from this world, you're killing my worshippers. This cannot be." And his voice changes when it's like he has a god voice as such.
Right.
And his accent changes, his voice gets a lot lower. It's so good the way he can just switch to that, because he's actually quite camp a lot of the time. So it's a very obvious change when he sort of switches into this other voice. Shadow has got out of the car and he's following the dog. Suddenly seems to be back in time in old Cairo, and you see these embers floating around, and he goes around to them. We see the Will James head on a post again, and he's kind of trying to explain that actually he's releasing those with no hope, and it seems that actually he's coming at this from a place of somewhat caring about people suffering, in that it's not him killing the people as such, but he's assisting. And he just said that he worships death. They wear the same skin. But it seems that he's kind of leading people who are already down and out to their eventual deaths. But the way he puts it across doesn't seem to be like as a revenge. It's more of a trying to help people it's trying to help them find peace.
Shuffle off that moral coil.
Yeah, and you think about it, you see, he distracts. I've just totally forgotten his name. Was it Jamal? Anyway. Yes, it was Jamal. Yeah, he distracts Jamal for long enough that the police catch him, that kind of thing. And I think he's doing it because he perceives that these people have no other way out, and he's kind of trying to help in a way. And then there's some sort of weird possession thing going on, with the embers go up Shadow's nose. And he says, "Carry my burden. When you share it with the world, I'll release you." And then, we get to the most awesome scene, I think, that's been in this.
You've been waiting for it for a minute or two. I said you've been waiting for it for a minute.
I have. So we see Sandy making some sort of concoction. Laura's kind of talking about her and Shadow's relationship. Sandy tells her she betrayed him before they got married because when she told him that she loved him in the first place, kind of implying actually she never loved him. And it kind of rubs her up the wrong way at first, and she's like, "Oh, okay, and you would know all about healthy relationships, would you?" Um, but then he explains how much he loves Brigitte and cares about her, and he says when she's not around, I fuck a lot of other women, and he's kind of just saying, well, yeah, but it implies that she knows that he does that. It's not a big deal, and it's very separate from how he feels about Brigitte. And when he finishes the potion, I suppose it would be, tells her it's just missing one ingredient, which he refers to as le vrai sang de l'amour, which he says is blood infused with love, but translates as the true blood of love, or the blood of true love. So, and it's got to be 2 drops. So I would say that rather than it being 2 drops of blood from one person, it's probably got to be one from each of 2 people who love each other and have a suspicion who it might be. And he's kind of asking her, what next? What are you going to do with your second chance? And asks her for truth as payment while she starts kissing him then. So kind of implying that what she intends to do is forget about Shadow and enjoy herself. Then we've got Brigitte dancing to Sweeney. I believe that's a dance called a banda. I could be entirely wrong, but I know that's something that's associated with them. And
I'm not familiar enough with dance to know exactly what that is.
it's a traditional.
I know what a samba is, but I don't know if that would be.
So as far as I know, this one is like a traditional dance that's usually part of sort of voodoo rituals. And it would make sense that there was some sort of other thing going on at that point. There is some sort of actual ritual going on in the background because
it's a very ritualistic scene.
Yeah, you've got the actual setting of where her and Sweeney are changes. They go from indoors, they appear to be inside like a crypt building or something, and then they're outside in what looks like a graveyard when this dance is going on. So it's like she's kind of transported them somewhere else or made things look different. And she taunts him actually, because she's saying that he's what was it? You've changed. You're too gone on the dead girl. So she sees that there's a thing there. So she's trying to seduce him, and he's kind of a bit like, yeah, but he's obviously thinking of Laura instead. Until she slaps him in the face, because obviously that's what gets most men going, is being walloped. So you've got those 2 at it in the graveyard. And again, there's this thing of like something else is going on, because where Laura and Sandy are shagging on the table, the candles go out. You come to sort of the candles at the forefront, and they're in the background, and the candles are blown out by something.
And
So again,
Laura doesn't have her autopsy scars anymore.
no, she's healed completely. It's I don't know. I can't remember if we saw them when Ibis was sewing her up last time. But yeah, it's like, because she had a scar on her shoulder as well, where she'd had to sew her arm back on, and yeah, all those scars seem to have healed. And then we get the thing where it changes to, it's actually Sweeney and Laura together, and the Baron and Brigitte together. So it appears that they've tricked them and done something to bring them together, perhaps. That's the only way I could really...
Sweeney even says it.
Yeah, we got fucked by them, quite literally and figuratively. And yeah, you see this, the scene where they're actually looking at each other is the exact scene that we saw in, was it episode 2? When 2 or 3, yeah, when we had the scene of them traveling through the horde. It flashes, and it was one of these things that it was like a blink and you'll miss it. I'd literally happened to look away from the screen at the right time, and I caught the flash of it when I'd looked back and saw that intermingled in the scene of them kind of spinning around. You saw them nude. You saw Laura's eyes back to normal in that scene. And we were speculating whether that was a continuity error or she was alive again. But obviously, it makes sense now that it was because it's after the death of Argus has recharged the coin. But yeah, it was like that exact scene when they're looking at each other. Then we get to... I actually start taking notes at this point. So we've got the grandma's funeral. The Reverend seeming to have a bit of a... is it a crisis of faith or more of a confession that he's saying, I lied to you all when I said everything was okay. It's not, this place isn't that great, and tells Ruby that she actually should leave. And what's next after that? It's the scene between
Laura and Sweeney afterwards.
Sorry?
Is
it back to them?
It goes back to Laura and Sweeney, and Sweeney calls her dead wife again.
Isn't it? Don't we see Wednesday with Ibis and Nancy?
Yeah,
The drink.
Yes, you're correct.
Yeah.
And then Shadow walks in and he's like, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah. It was pretty funny that Nancy's stroking the cat and she fucks off, and he's like, well, you've kind of ruined my evening then. He's obviously had his eye on the cat. Yeah, they're all kind of getting drunk and singing together. They seem to be enjoying themselves, and they're all taking the piss out of Shadow then. There's also a reference, I don't know the story, but Wednesday kind of tips his drink towards Nancy and says, tiger balls. There's some tale of him doing something to a tiger's balls. I don't know it. I just know it's one of the kind of folk tales.
It's a nasty story.
Yeah.
We'll go into that in section 2. But actually, we can totally start section 2 off with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it is in the book.
And and then the last thing we've got is Laura and Sweeney, kind of the morning after the night before. And they both seem a little bit freaked out by what's happened. They're kind of... Laura thinks that Wednesday has manoeuvred it all, and he's trying to say actually it's nothing to do with him. It was the lower, that it was them, they're death gods as well, and it's them that they've fucked with us. And
I want no part in your war.
Yeah.
I know you. What is it she says? I know you want a war to die in.
Yeah, but you're too afraid to go and find your own. Too much of a coward to find your own, I think it is, she says. And it's really quite sad that it seems like you would have thought that obviously they both seem to know that the other one was aware of what happened, like it wasn't a dream or something, it was real. But neither of them wants to talk about it. Or I think maybe Sweeney would have talked about it, but Laura's just like, "Now, fuck this, I'm out of here." And as soon as she leaves, as soon as his coin leaves, he's unlucky again because his lighter won't light when he tries to light a cigarette. And it's like instant luck running out as soon as she walks out the door. She kind of takes his good fortune with her. This is where yours doesn't work. Yeah, I actually found that scene a little bit sad because I totally shipped them anyway, and it was just like, oh yay, they finally got together, and then it's but they haven't.
Having what you want is getting what you wanted.
Yeah, I think he'll probably try to follow her. I don't know if he has some sort of way of being able to track where the coin is. How like Laura can see the glow from shadow. I wonder if there's some sort of trace or signal or something that the coin gives off that he would be able to follow. But he's not just going to let it go. I imagine he's going to catch up to her, and they'll have some sort of. They'll have it out, they'll have like a row about it. Oh, she didn't hit him for calling her a cunt this time. She did last time because she doesn't like being called that. And he does explain to her that he owes Wednesday and that he hates him like more than she could possibly know.
Yeah.
So yeah, be good if we find out why.
I think
why
that's
he owes him.
important.
I think we'll find out in one of the episodes. Not next week, maybe the week after, I think, because we're supposed to be getting a very Sweeney focused episode. So hopefully we'll see a bit more of that, and maybe Wednesday will actually be in that, and we'll find out what went on. Yeah, that was pretty much it. So
that's the episode.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't done any spoilers for any book readers. I'm going to get up for just a second. If anybody wants to grab themselves a snack or a drink or whatever, go ahead. And spoilers ahoy in about 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Now I'm just going to very quickly stretch my back, and I'll be back shortly. I am just going to quickly catch up on what's been going on in the chat as well, so won't be a moment.
Amy will be back in a moment. Thank you all for hanging out. From here on out, we're talking some serious spoilers. This is all for people who've read the book, or for people who are reading the book. No holds barred here. We're not just talking about the episode. We're also talking a lot of speculation, things like that. Brown Holler's drinking more coffee. Brown Holler, thank you for being here, by the way. On the other side of the world. Okay. The show has diverged from the books pretty significantly.
Mm-hmm. Surprises keep coming.
How do you feel?
I'm liking it. It's I like that we're getting a lot more character development than in the books, particularly with Laura. At first, she's a bit of a pain in the ass, and she's not very likable. But now I do kind of have a little bit of sympathy for her, and like I've said a few times now, I'm quite interested to see where it goes with her and Mad Sweeney. And if she is a reincarnation of Essie, that's perhaps why he feels the way he does about her.
Well, I think that's exactly what it's leading to, is that she's a reincarnation of Essie.
Mm-hmm.
And also the dead woman in Cairo.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, she's
Imagination Realm still doesn't like her.
Oh well. There's still time for it to grow on you. Bear Island Josh has mentioned the guy who plays Sweeney was in the second season of The Wire. I've not watched The Wire.
Nor have
But
I.
his brother's more famous than him. Pablo Schreiber is the actor's name, and I don't know if it's Schreiber or Schreiber, but Liv Schreiber is his brother, and he's sort of quite a lot more famous. But I can't see a resemblance with them at all. But he does his accent very well. So
He does, and it's interesting for me because he does the accent very well. I, given my family, like I hate when people poorly do Irish accents.
Yeah,
and living in the UK yourself, or even me living in America, like there are different parts of the country have different accents.
Yeah,
and Sweeney has a Cork accent.
Yeah, it's very southern, isn't it? The way it sounds,
or Cornwall, even to an extent. But the way he enunciates certain words, it's like, it's very complicated for me.
So that's the thing with Irish accents. I can distinguish between an Irish accent and a Northern Irish accent. But beyond that, I couldn't distinguish anything beyond that. I can you can hear the differences very clearly between Northern Ireland and the rest of the country, but I wouldn't recognise like regional variations and the regional dialects and that kind of thing. That's completely beyond me.
It's those ironic things, like I recognize the difference between Birmingham and Manchester.
That's quite a distinction, though.
But you don't have a Birmingham accent. I mean, I know you live in Birmingham and you grew up there and all that, but
it's funny that
your accent is a lot closer to Manchester than it is to Birmingham. It leads to me.
See, it's not my accent's not even remotely northern. It's very much a Midlands accent, and most of the people from the UK would recognise it as being from Birmingham. It's not I don't have like a really Brummy accent that you'd associate with Ozzy Osbourne and the like. But actually, what most people stereotype as a Brummy accent isn't actually a Birmingham accent at all. It's a Black Country accent. And it's a bit of a bone of contention between the two. But yes, I don't call anyone cock as a term of endearment, which is a common thing. I don't say yam. We refer to them as yam yams, and that's like an insult to people with a Black Country accent. So if anybody ever calls me a yam yam, I'm like, I don't talk like that at all. And it's because they say yam, as in you am, which makes my teeth itch. But yeah, that's where it comes from, because they wouldn't say you are, they'd say yam. And I can't even do a Black Country accent, even if I tried. So,
back to the show.
oh, Bear Island Josh, Bear Island Josh dated a Yorkshire girl for a few years. Yeah, there's a very big difference. But I'd say it's probably the same for you guys. Like there's variations between states in accents. So
Well, yeah, not just states, regions, and you know, for me, like my pronunciation and enunciation are very different from most people, just because of my upbringing and people who have known and things like that. Most people from my part of the country speak in a much more smooth manner, I guess you would say, than I do. Like I enunciate every word that comes out of my mouth. That's the way I learned English. But
yeah,
generally, people.
See, I don't. I'm dropping T's all over the place. That's not the worst as well. But yeah, I drop letters a lot from the way I speak. Well, we've completely gone off on the rails already.
That's what we do. If you get out of here afterwards, you have no idea.
Well, yeah, we were only talking about Sweeney's accent. One thing I forgot to mention though was the curse at the end.
Yeah.
I wonder who he was cursing though. Was it Laura? Was it the Baron? Maybe. It's left quite ambiguous. Hang on one second.
So Amy is gone for a moment. What did everybody else think of this episode? And if you're still sticking around, I'm assuming you watched the show. And I'm assuming you read the book, because if you're sticking around, like, as we said, this is extremely spoiler heavy. Does anybody have any thoughts? Farrell and Josh, I know you're a big book reader. Imagination Realm, I think you said you read the book. Brown Holler. Anybody? Yeah, we're going to go back into this in just a minute.
I'm back. Sorry about that.
Amy's back.
What did I miss?
It's me waffling.
The usual then. So who's
Brown Holler watched the show only once. Yeah, I only got to watch it twice. Like, normally I watch it 3 times, and I was going to do my note taking, but my cable's being unpleasant.
okay.
Farrell and Josh, quite liked it, but he's confused about where they're going with the froggy thing.
Okay, if you this is something that I was literally like the vaguest thing that I've read, but apparently the thing with Will James, Froggy James, which is how Ibis refers to him as, was an actual real person. So that is based on true events. And he really was sort of accused of something that he didn't do. The sheriff really did try to protect him from a mob, and then he did get lynched, shot, dragged behind a car, and burnt. So yeah, it was that was actually based on a true story, which makes it even worse.
It makes it far worse. The thing they do so well in the show is pull in these things that really happen, like the Essie episode, like that deportation, like, or what was it called back then? I can't remember the term.
Yeah, it was like the
Can hang or go to America or Australia. What's the bloody fucking term?
I know what you mean. It was like the penance, wasn't it?
But like that really did happen. That was like a common thing.
Yeah.
And it I mean, the show really does bring these true stories in. Also, we have Brent Haller said that Yggdrasil that Odin's being on is not an ash tree. Which I think is interesting. I need to check that out because, ashes have pretty specific leaves. Transportation. Thank you, Brownhall.
Yeah, and it was sort of used as a thing. It's kind of essentially it was instead of going to prison, wasn't it?
Yeah, or getting hung. Which is something this episode keeps coming back to. The show keeps coming back to. I like most of the changes that they're making. I really do. I need to see where they're going. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think there are any changes that I haven't liked. All the things that they've did, the things that they've added, they've all worked well with the story as a whole. And like I said about that, they've developed some characters a lot more, and it works with the rest of the story. There's nothing that I've sat there and kind of rolled my eyes and gone, why are they doing this? Which is something I do with another popular TV series, which I'll no doubt be doing on Sunday night.
I might have spoken about that once or twice. I might know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I'm still going to get up at 2:00 in the morning to watch it, but.
Well, for me, like my first watching for American Gods is because I work Sunday nights. So I come home and I watch American Gods, and I guess this week I'm going to watch American Gods before I watch Game of Thrones. And
technically, I could do that too.
It's better telly. I'm sorry. It's better telly. I'm not saying Game of Thrones is bad, but
no, I know it's
better.
Yeah, you rank American Gods above Thrones, so yeah, I totally get that. But yeah, I am. My initial plan for it was that I would, rather than watching it live, because when it comes on live here in the UK, it's 2 o'clock in the morning on the Monday. I was going to just get up for work an hour early and watch it before work. And then I remembered I've got next week off work. And then the week after, the Monday is a bank holiday. So I won't be in work that Monday either. So for the first 2 episodes, I can actually get up and watch it live. And then after that, I will be getting up an hour early. Because the problem with having friends on the other side of the pond means it makes it kind of hard to avoid spoilers online if I left it until like the Monday evening, when most normal people, sensible people who don't want to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning would actually watch it. But yeah, I couldn't go to work without watching it first. But then I have to bite my lip all day because no one else at work would have watched it yet.
Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm excited for that show, but you know, I'm not doing a stream a week about that show.
No,
because it's really not exciting to me. It's decent telly, but it's not good telly. It doesn't move me.
Yeah, there's only so many things that can be picked apart from it before it starts to get repetitive. I think with there being so many channels now that have it as their primary focus. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'll still watch like reviews and breakdowns and stuff, but I can't watch 10 different people say the same thing because it gets boring and I have far more important things to be doing with my time, like watching American Gods or Battlestar Galactica. That's kind of what my week revolves around. So there we go.
American Gods and Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's all your fault.
It's all my fault.
I shall blame you for that entirely.
But no, American Gods. Okay, let's go back into this episode. We'll talk about the spoilery stuff that we couldn't talk about earlier. The shadow shaving scene. Up until the fire in the eyes, like it's straight out of the book. Like because he's shaving, and he just puts the razor against his throat, and he's like, because there's the scene in the book. He's like, I could just end it, and if anybody could deal with it, it's people in this house because, like,
it wouldn't be the end. Yeah, it's. I really liked the way they did it, though. You know, he's kind of he's looking at his face. It's like because obviously those wounds healed last week, didn't they, from his time on the train and rambling through the wilderness. Bast healed them, so it's kind of like he's kind of like looking at his face, like, oh yeah, all those cuts have gone, and then getting the absolute crap scared out of him. I still can't get over how much that made me jump as well. I don't normally get that. Like jump scares don't tend to get me that often, but God, that one did because it was so unexpected.
Yeah, shaving.
Oh, bear on, Josh.
I expected it.
It's mistletoe, not holly.
Yeah, it's mistletoe.
Gosh. But yeah, actually, you were mentioning about Loki in the books as well. We did. We have touched on it in previous stream when we've talked about book spoilers. Who Loki actually is in the show.
He is. We didn't get to see him this episode.
No, none of the new gods this episode at all. Which, I mean, it wasn't a bad thing. The last episode was quite new god heavy as such. Like we had an origin story for Tech Boy we saw some more of new media, this kind of thing. It was nice to have like a break from that and just focus on the old god side. And obviously Laura and Sweeney weren't in the previous episode either, so to catch up with them. But we'll be seeing the new gods next episode as well.
Well, you've been shipping Laura and Sweeney, and now you got what you wanted, and it's so unsatisfying.
Yeah, very much so. But they're not going to leave it there. I mean, this thing, he obviously likes being slapped about a bit from his encounter with Brigitte.
I love that Laura says, you. I mean, I brought this up before, but that Laura says, he promised you your war.
Mm.
Like, and you're going to, but it's going to be nothing to you. I have a theory. I think Mad Sweeney will be dead by the end of the season.
Like dead, or
Dead.
Oh, that would be really sad.
No, I think it would be really sad too.
I'd genuinely be sad to see that.
But I think the show is, to an extent, mirroring the character arcs that are in the books.
Yeah.
But they're being done in a slightly different way.
Mm.
And I do think by the end of this season, Mad Sweeney is going to be dead.
Oh, that'd be sad. Because we were actually saying that, like, he probably doesn't have a lot of worshippers anymore. If any, he's one of these gods that's being forgotten about, really. God, or deity /
One of the I
creature.
like seeing in that is a Jesus Christ that that he's like, fuck you, all that, the whole wave of Celtic movements, like into Britain and Ireland. You have like repetitive. A new group of people comes in, and a new group of people comes in, and every time they do, the older gods get diminished.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, Mad Sweeney's a folktale. Like, who prays to him anymore?
Yeah.
Like, I could loan you a book if you want that has some great stories about Mad Sweeney and why he's mad and his wrath.
Yeah, I know the origin story. I think we briefly mentioned it in one of the earlier episodes. Some god awful pronunciation, but yeah, it'd be really sad if he dies. But we were talking about maybe like there's probably nobody that leaves milk out for him anymore. But I think it was something we touched on in the scene, the fight scene with him and Laura on the train, that he seemed to gain some sort of power from that.
Yeah.
It could be that there could be some sort of evolving from it.
Because that's what he's a war god.
Yeah.
Now he might be a bit more pleasant of a war god than another war god that we're talking about in this show.
Mm-hmm. So I could see maybe him somewhat losing the leprechaun part of himself, but being reincarnated in a different way. That's possible. But yeah, either way, I'd still be disappointed to see him go. And Ron Haller mentions the way they run the storyline, the show deaths being the same as the book. I'm not sure if Bilquis will be the same because we've already run someone over with a limo.
Yeah, you know, I don't. I mean, I've read the books, but or the book, but Bilquis still annoys the fuck out of me. Like, show Bilquis really annoys me. And in the same space, show and Nancy like has a much bigger agenda than
Yeah, definitely.
Book of Nancy does, and I'm really wondering about that. Like, you know, there's I'm hoping by the end of the season we at least kind of get a nod to where he's going and what he's doing. Because in the book, it's like, yeah, Odin, you're doing your thing. I'll hang out because you know I've no place better to go, essentially.
Yeah, and he's another one of these old gods that really he's not doing too badly on his own. You know, he still has quite a lot of worshippers. His stories are still told. He's known.
It goes back to what we were talking about. What was it, episode 2? Did you at least get the rabbit?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, because Rare Rabbit stories are for anyone in the American South. Like, Rare Rabbit stories are Nancy stories. They're just retold with a rabbit instead of a spider.
But even like the stories in their original things are still being told. Like,
Right.
you know, he's not like Soria. You know, like they said, you know, she's nobody else is. You know, she's got no more worshippers anymore, and she's been forgotten. And he's not one of those gods that's kind of being forgotten about. He still has a lot of worshippers and followers as such. There's a lot of people that still, you know, tell his stories. So again, he's another one of these where this war between the old gods and the new gods, like he's probably not really seeing the new gods as that much of a threat because they're not gonna make him be forgotten about as such.
Well, there's I think it was last episode, or it might have been 2 episodes ago, when Bilquis bumps into Nancy and Wednesday, and she says to Wednesday, she's like, I was old before they killed the first horse in your name.
Oh, that was it. I was old in the desert before.
And then she looks at Nancy and she's like,
Mm.
you know, he's been around a long time. And yes, Beryl and Josh, I totally agree with you. Orlando Jones as a Nancy is
Yeah.
might be the best casting in this entire show.
He does play the part very, very well.
Sorry. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's like this whole show has some amazing casting, but yeah, Orlando Jones as a Nancy, like he comes across as that character so well.
Yeah, he plays the part fantastically. Although I think all the casting actually is really good in the show. There's not anybody I would say that they've
Agreed.
missed the mark with. Especially Wednesday. He's
I did have a slight disappointment that Alvis wasn't more beefy.
Yeah.
Because in the book they point out in the book Gaiman points out he's like he had hands like ham hocks and feet that looked like shoe boxes, and like he was and it's like, you know, but I do think the actor who played Elvis in this episode was really good.
He is a good actor.
Like,
I've seen him in other stuff. The only thing that springs to mind that's recent is that he was in Once Upon a Time.
no, I
But
never watched that show.
I haven't watched the last 2 seasons of that. I think I got halfway through and just it started to take a bit of an odd direction. But yeah, he was actually one of the seven dwarfs in that. Obviously, slightly typecast, but yeah, he's a very good actor. But yeah, I see what you mean. Kind of appearance wise, he's very normal looking.
Yeah, and I was just the way the character's written in the book, I was expecting like somebody big and beefy.
Speaking of someone big and beefy, in the next episode, the preview, is that Thor?
Yeah. Oh, and the vaudeville.
Yeah.
I don't know what to make of the preview. What do you think?
It was very campy, wasn't it? It's I think as I mentioned earlier, that Wednesday talks about his burlesque days, and it looks like he's putting on some sort of show. I can very much see him in a sort of ringmaster type role.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got the strong man, so it's almost like a circus. Yeah, I'd be interested to see where they're going to go with that. I only watched the preview once, actually. It's quite a short one.
You remember in the book, Thor, Odin references it. Wednesday references it. In a dirty hotel room in 1939, he shot himself.
And he doesn't really talk about him. He references him once, I think, so far that we've heard, which is when they're in the Hall of the Gods.
Yeah.
And just very briefly mentions when we came to America, me and Thor.
Bye, Bear Island, Josh. Have a good night.
Thank you for coming.
Have a great day at work.
I'm going to have to bounce myself in a minute, to be honest, because it's nearly midnight.
Yeah.
I've got work in the morning.
Anything you want to say about this episode before you pop?
I'm just thinking, I hope we see Sandy and Brigitte again. I think they will play brilliantly. Absolutely fantastic. The actors.
I could definitely take seeing more Brigitte. I'd be fine with that.
In fact, it would be interesting if we're having some sort of Sweeney origin story if she were to pop up.
Oh, I was going to say if they want to make a spin-off show that's just her, I would totally watch that.
I believe you as well. Yeah, but I think they could definitely bring her back in a different, not a different role, but a different incarnation of her. But obviously she could be played by the same actress. They could definitely do that with a Sweeney origin story.
I would really like that. Yeah, definitely. Like, I'm hoping when the Sweeney origin story happens, like you'd see Brigitte as Brigade,
Mm-hmm.
like freaking war goddess, like war insect, as we were talking about earlier, like is sex and death. It's a very common narrative in so much mythology.
Yeah.
But like I would like to see it. Don't get me wrong, I love it in the context that it's put in, like the New Orleans context. But
Oh, yeah. It worked really well.
I would like to see it in a more original, not original as in like, by original I mean like the way the deity was originally thought of.
yeah.
You know, as like a sex and death goddess
Hmm.
in Ireland, which obviously Brigitte is Brigade.
Yeah, and she was also part of the Tour de Danann, yeah, which is also where Mad Sweeney. Um, is there a link there?
Well, yeah, there are all those little notes dropped there. Oh, you again? And when she's like, you missed this, didn't you?
Oh, when she said again. No, I did get it. I did write it down. I think
It
there was an implication that there was some history between them.
just a wee bit. But I think it's no. My point is just that it's so well done in the show because it's not in your face. It's like there's little things for people to pick up.
Yeah, it's there's so many little nods to sort of these little bits and pieces, and um yeah, it's one of these things that I want to see more of it, and I want them to expand on it more. But there's only 3 episodes left of the season, so it's like how much they're going to introduce this character, and then are they just going to leave it? Or it's the same thing with Easter last season. Like she was a bit annoying when they introduced her, and then all of a sudden she's Ostara again, and I was just like, yeah, this is awesome. And then nothing's come of it at all. I mean, obviously they can't help that because the actress left, but they could have done something along the lines of a different incarnation. She could have been like younger and this kind of thing, and they've just not even explored it further. And they could have done so much going.
They're pulling so many news stories in here.
Yeah, it's like, how are they going to fit it all in?
Is there a data you want? Yeah, because there was actually somebody on in my comments who said they felt like the show is more style over substance, and they're introducing too many characters. I think they're going to pull it all together. Do
Oh, I
you?
think they will. Yeah. I think it is leading to like a big crescendo.
Culmination.
Yeah, and I don't. They're not. They're not introducing these characters just because they can. There will be some. Yeah, there will be like a conclusion. With the tree, I can see it going in that towards that storyline from the books for the next season. I think they'll probably keep the tree in the background for a little while, and it'll be there, so it's being hinted at for book readers, but they won't actually make it a big thing until maybe like the end of the last episode of the season.
Now, you saw the preview for next episode, right?
Mhm.
Given that, do you have any predictions?
Uh, Obviously, we're going to meet a new old god. Let's think. I think it would be good if we saw a new incarnation of Tech Boy. Because it was just like, he's gone, retired. At the end of the last episode,
and the actor's so freaking great. Like, I really love the actor who plays Tech Boy.
Yeah, he's like one of those.
First name off the top of my head, but
yeah, he's like a love to hate kind of character, isn't it? But that kind of the fact that you find him so annoying, and you're like, oh god, you just want to give him a slap. That's what shows how good the actor is. Yeah, I think if we're saying the new gods, I think there's going to be, well, we are, because there was this thing in the preview of Mr. World. There's got to be some at least discussion of what happened to Tech Boy and what's going to happen. Like, is he going to come back in another form? Is his retirement temporary? And if we don't actually see him, I think we'll perhaps maybe see it as a maybe like new media asking about him, like, oh well, what's going to happen now? So hopefully we'll find out a bit more about that. Can't think of anything else. Maybe Sweeney trying to find Laura because she's fucked off somewhere. But the thing is, I think if she's going to go anywhere, she's not just going to go off on her own. I think she'll go back to try and find Shadow. That's the only other thing that's been her goal, really, is getting back to him. So I think that's kind of the direction she's going to head in.
But as Baron Samedi points out, like, she lied to him when she said she loved him in the first place. But now she's like stuck. I like the direction that this is going in. I think we'll get. I think we will be introduced to another deity in the next episode.
Apart from Thor.
Apart from Thor.
Okay.
I think it'll probably be a bit part. This episode I thought was great. Like, I rewatched it and I wanted to rewatch it a second time and wasn't able to because Spectrum TV is not pleasant at times. You have a ranking for this episode?
Oh, I'm going to give this episode 9.4. Oh, I need to think of something amusing. 9.4 what? Oh, you give yours while I'm thinking.
I agree with you. I'll go 9.4 maggots on the floor.
Very good. You might be wrong as well. 9.4 gyrating dances in a graveyard. That's the best I can come up with. It's late.
I will totally take 9.4 gyrating dances in a graveyard. But much like yourself, I'm a creepy motherfucker. So
obviously it was going to be something to do with the graveyard, wasn't it?
We had Baron Samedi. Thank you all who came out tonight. Love talking this show. I think this is probably the best telly since Battlestar.
And we've kept it under 3 hours tonight as well, which is good going.
We have kept it under 3 hours, so Amy will not punch me, nor will her husband.
I wouldn't punch you. That's Johnny's job.
Well, Johnny Donkey Punch. Never mind. We're not going to go into that. Anyway. No, all of you, thanks for coming out. Run Holler, thank you for being the one spanner that rules them all. And we're heading out here. In the meantime, we will see you next Wednesday. A very fortuitous day. By the way, it's about to storm here, which is just awesome because it's Wednesday. And in the meantime, please believe.
Believe.